Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hey guys, all right, I have a great episode for you today. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. I'm Macy. If you're brand new, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. Thank you in advance for sharing with your friends. If any episode ever resonates, please share it with your loved ones, with your friends. Tag me in social media of you listening. I love it, and I love to meet you. Even if I never work with you, I still love to know and meet my listeners. So if you've been a long-time listener and you never have introduced yourself on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or email, reach out. Let me know that you're a listener. I would love to say hi. All right. Let's talk about today's episode. It's juicy and it's good, and I hope that you get so many takeaways walking away from this episode. But the title is this what I really want or just what I've settled for? And if you're unsure if this episode is for you, here's the whole thing we're going to be digging into. It's whether your current life is intentionally chosen or unconsciously accepted, okay? So here is the biggest thing. It's really easy to look around at your life and tell yourself things like, I'm grateful, I've checked the boxes, I should be content. But there's usually a primary word after that sentence, and that usually is but. And I just want to draw attention into something. When women feel like there's still something more or still something inside of them, a lot of times the emotion that follows is shame. And it could be they're just feeling shame because they feel like they should be okay. They should be content. They should be not having this feeling of there must be something more. There's something else out there for me. So they shame themselves. But also I think in society, there's also a lot of shame around this because people assume that if you feel this feeling within your life, that you're being ungrateful. And what I want to bring awareness to is just because you feel an inner knowing or you're questioning, is this it? It doesn't mean that you are ungrateful as a human being, okay? It just means you're following an intuitive nudge that you're not done. And I don't know what that means for you. That could take place in so many different categories of your life. But it does not remove the fact that you can be grateful for exactly where you are, who you have in your life, what you have in your life, what you've experienced thus far, and still live within the principle of knowing this is not your practice life. You don't get a million different life opportunities, right? You have one life, one fragile life. You have a certain amount of time and nobody knows what that timeline is. And if you're feeling this nudge, it does not mean that you're not grateful for how far you've come, where you are, what you have, or who you have. It just means that there is this inner nudge or knowing that there's more available to you with the time you have left and you haven't figured it out. And I think that's a lot of times what women feel. That's what I felt when I was finishing up grad school. And even though technically I had checked all the boxes and technically I had a planned out trajectory, there was still an inner something in me that there was something else or there was something more. And it didn't mean I was ungrateful for grad school, who I had met, the experiences I had, the career that I started out in, but I felt something. And following that is what led me here to you guys. as someone who has a podcast, as someone who became a coach, as someone who has been able to help hundreds of women. So I encourage you to listen to that. So we're really going to dig into that. Are you, really leaning into the fact that you have chosen your life, or have you gotten comfortable into settling for your life? Okay. So we're going to dive into the difference between living by default versus by conscious choice. And if you've ever had that feeling like something's off, but you can't explain maybe what it is, then this episode is for you. So here is the first thing we need to talk about, and that is that default living feels safe, but it also feels stagnant. So here's the thing about default living. It's what naturally occurs to us because it's the mundane everyday routines that we get into. And again, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it's familiar, it's routine, and it's often based on what's expected of us, whether that is by family and the routines that you all have gotten into the habit of getting into and your roles and responsibilities, or it's society and how you're showing up, how you volunteer your time, how you spend your time in your career, or it can even be past versions of yourself, like the version of you used to be, maybe even before you had a family, and what people still expect for you. So the thing about default living is it is kind of like the routines that we get into every single day, and we get thrown into them, and it feels really good to get into a routine, but after a while it starts to feel, stagnant, even though at the same time it's safe because your brain has prepped you to know this is exactly what you do. And if there's one thing that I have, said ad nauseum on this podcast, is that the brain is there to protect you. It doesn't like change, and it doesn't really love spontaneity. Like, some people here and there like the spontaneity of things new, but for the most part, we like our comfort zone. So, maybe you're in a place where you have built a life that you haven't questioned, or you didn't question like why things have ended up the way that they've ended up. And the thing about it is that right now what life can maybe feel like is it's one that makes sense with everything that you've got going on and with your roles and responsibilities. But what that nudge may be inside is that you don't feel lit up. Maybe your life currently doesn't light you up. And for some people, they're like, does my life have to light me up? And that's, I think, a totally personal answer. But I think the women who know that, like, this episode is going to resonate with a certain woman. It's going to resonate more than likely with the woman that's like, I have definitely gotten stuck in my routines and who I am for everybody else, and I don't feel like I have really asked myself what I want or what would feel good in my life. And I think a lot of women get stuck in the safety routines and forget and almost put themselves on the back burner. And that ends up being a lot of the clients that I work with, where they're just like, they get good at asking themselves more and more, what do I desire and what do I need to change or work on or grow in within my life? And then everything else falls in order more beautifully in their life after that, okay? So the biggest question to kind of see if this episode really is for you is to answer this question, and that is, if nothing changed in 3 years. So let's talk about your daily routines, what you're doing, how your life looks, who's in your life, your routines around your life, your job, the money that you make or that you desire, the friends that you have or don't have, your family relationships, whether that's immediate family, like you've birthed these people, it's your, partner, or it's family that, raised you, your siblings, all of the things. When you think about all the aspects of your current day-to-day life, if nothing changed in 3 years, would you still feel proud of the life that you're building? Would you still feel happy and content and in love with your life? Or would you be like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine things staying the same exact way that they are right now? So like maybe what that looks like, maybe what this reflects upon is communication style with your partner and how you speak to each other when you are in like maybe a heated moment, or boundaries or lack of boundaries, or how you show up as a people pleaser and you do a bunch of things that you don't actually want to be doing. So really think about that. If nothing changed in 3 years, would you still feel proud, excited, happy, content with the life you're building? If any part of you said no, then stick around so we can talk through it. So let's get into signs that you may be living by default, okay? These are some common things that will come up for clients. Maybe you've stopped dreaming or planning beyond survival or maintenance, okay? So you plan what you need to do or what you have to do based on your current routines and setup, based on who you help in your life. And that comes easily. You plan things out just to make sure you're not totally drowning. Okay, so that's survival or maintenance that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, you don't really know what you want for yourself, and you have stopped dreaming completely. You've stopped asking yourself, what do I want? What would really make me feel fulfilled? Do I actually feel like I am thriving, or do I feel like I'm surviving? Okay, so that can be a sign that you're living by default. Another way is that you downplay your desires with thoughts like, well, that's not realistic, or maybe someday, or one day. Anytime a client has language around that's not realistic, or someday, or one day, I usually, like as their coach, point out that that mentality a lot of times means never. It sounds harsh, but a lot of times if you are approaching your life that way and your desires that way, like maybe someday, maybe one day, I have to tell you that every single consult I have ever done in 7 years where a woman told me maybe someday, maybe one day, or that just doesn't feel realistic, they are in the same place. I have even had people that I've done maybe like 2 consults with, like spaced 2 to 3 years apart, where they came back and they thought that they were going to push themselves and be ready. And what they will tell me is I'm in the exact same place that I was in when I talked to you 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And it makes me so incredibly sad. I 1000% understand it, but I always think, gosh, if that hadn't been your mentality 2 or 3 years ago, how different would life look now versus the way that that time has passed regardless 2 to 3 years later, and you're in the same exact place feeling the same exact things. So really be mindful of that default language where your brain is maybe holding on to beliefs like something's not realistic for you, or you're going to do it someday or one day, because again, it's almost like the language that our brain uses to have hope that something's going to change, but there's a subconscious action behind it, and it's really nothing changes and it becomes never. Okay, that becomes the result for most people. Some other signs that you can be living by default is that while grateful, you at times feel numb. So almost like you're checking boxes, but you're missing the aliveness in your life. It can also be that you've made decisions out of fear. So a lot of women that are living by default, their decisions come from fear of instability, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort, on and on. And then also it could be that, maybe you struggle to articulate what you want in your life without referencing other people. So what do you want that doesn't reference what your kids want, what your spouse wants, what what's wanted from you in your job? Like truly, if you just answered it for yourself and you didn't, for the purpose of this question, have to consider anybody else, how would you describe what it is that you want? That's really hard a lot of times for women to articulate, because many times for women, we become our roles. So, we end up just throwing ourselves into our roles, which oftentimes is so rewarding. And there is a huge part of us that wants to do it. But at the same time, sometimes we will totally put ourselves on the back burner and not even know how to articulate what it is that we want, because we've been so wrapped up in what everybody else needs or desires, and we put that first. And so it's not to say that you can't keep serving your family in that way or making sure that they're okay. But the red flag, so to speak, is that for many of the women that start off working with me, they never have really asked themselves what's important to them and what they want and who they are outside of their titles and roles and responsibilities. And a lot of times that's what creates that kind of just default mundane, like I feel like there's something else or there has to be something else, but I don't know what it is. And I also feel shame for even thinking about it. Okay. So here is the biggest thing and the skill, that is needed. And, you've been here on the podcast, the skills that I help women work on. And that is a lot of times their mindset. But the biggest thing is emotional intelligence. That is the whole MO. Okay. It is huge in your overall awareness because emotional intelligence helps you notice what you're feeling without the judgment. And those skills that you build through emotional intelligence, like your self-awareness, like reality testing, which means you're able to see things more neutral, and even your independence, so being free of other people's, emotional experiences, all of that will help you assess what is my truth. Is this something that I've been taught to want or to do, or is it something I really do want to do? Do I want this because I chose it, or because it was available to me, convenient, expected of me? That's huge, right? So many of us, a lot of times, especially women, will do things because it feels like the expectation. It feels like what we're supposed to do. It's the natural order of things that are, ingrained in us, but also conditioned in us through society. And so emotional intelligence just kind of helps you take a step back, not necessarily saying you have to change everything or how you do every single thing, but it's that awareness of, really asking, what is my truth? What is it that I want? How do I want to show up in my life or care for me? Have I even allowed myself to explore that without judging myself, without shaming myself? So emotionally intelligent women ultimately ask themselves, what would I choose if I fully trusted myself? What changes might I make? So, this is just something to really consider. Again, it doesn't mean you're ungrateful for your life. It doesn't mean you have to change every single thing. But what it means is you put yourself first, in the sense of asking, is there anything that I am not doing for me or experiencing in my life that is important to me, in addition to being maybe a mom and being an awesome mom at that, and taking care of my kids and helping them live out their best lives, and being there for my spouse and making sure that, his or her needs are met as well. Like, all of those things are still important and can still be such a huge aspect of your life. We're not saying run away from all of your roles and responsibilities, but what we're saying is, instead of putting yourself constantly on the back burner and then feeling guilt when you try to put yourself first, to get better at the skill of emotional intelligence, to know that it is okay to ask yourself, am I doing well? Are my needs met? Because the default for a lot of women is making sure everybody else is okay, and that everybody else is okay first. And then what do we need, if we even ask ourselves what we need? And this is about not getting in that default setting of everybody else, but never yourself, because that's what leads to burnout and resentment and a lot of the numbness and the mundane routines and the things that just don't always feel good. Okay. So if you're feeling that resentment or restlessness or disconnection from yourself and even your self-concept, or you feel yourself projecting dissatisfaction onto others, or you're numbing out, maybe you're buffering, maybe you're using lots of glasses of wine or alcohol or food to cope, or TV or social media or gambling, or bouncing from relationship to relationship, whatever distractions it may be, shopping, getting on Amazon, spending a lot of money there, then spending a lot of money, going places, buying things that you don't necessarily need, that can be a sign that there is, some numbing out, that maybe you're not satisfied, even if you've told yourself you are or that you should be. And here's the thing, the longer that you stay in this default pattern, the harder it is to remember what you really want and who you really want to be. So it's so important, okay? So here's how you're going to move through this. You have to start living by choice more and more, okay? Give yourself permission to want more, even if your life looks fine, even if you love your life. Maybe you do love how everything is going, but you just recognize you put yourself on the back end a little bit more. And instead of being okay with that and accepting that, you're just making yourself a priority the same way that you make everybody else a priority as well. Your kids, your family, your job, whatever it may be, okay? Revisit what your desires are without judging them. No desire is too silly. No dream is too big or too small. Don't shame yourself. Make sure you're paying attention to that language of it's not realistic or who am I to have that? Be very mindful of that. Get help working through that. That's a wonderful reason to have a coach or just someone that's really holding you accountable to what you say you want. And if you are taking the steps to becoming the woman that's going to do it or pursue it or have it, or if you're going to let that sabotage live in your mind and get stuck on the default routines because you don't believe in yourself or because your confidence is low at this time. All of that is figure outable and all of it can be changed if it's something that you really want. Sometimes that is one of the most powerful reasons to put yourself in a position where you're getting the support and the coaching. It's so that you don't live in the default setting. Another thing is really practice asking yourself things like, if I could design my life from scratch, what would I include and what would I let go of? Huge. What would I include? What would I let go of? I love asking myself this question, and I love encouraging clients to ask, who would I be? What would I want? What is a non-negotiable in my life? What do I want to make sure that I experience, and what do I need to absolutely remove from my life or let go of? And the last thing that I will say is you have to start with small, brief choices, because every intentional decision in your life builds momentum. And actually, even the unconscious decisions you're not even thinking of, those mundane routines that you're in, those are still costing you something. They're still creating results. So you really do have to be self-aware and intentional about the decisions that you're making, whether they're conscious or subconscious, and really looking at that, because everything that you are doing in your day-to-day life and the decisions you're making, whether they're microscopic or they're huge, are impacting the results you're going to live, with in your life. And last but not least, it's who do you surround yourself with, the people that are around you. Something that is really helpful to make sure that you are holding yourself accountable and you're growing and evolving is really getting clear on how you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with. Do you have a coach in your life or a therapist in your life? Do you have really great friends or mentors, people who see your potential and challenge your comfort zone? That's the biggest thing and one of the greatest things of coaching, and something that I encourage in, my group programs, and even now with this new one-on-one coaching offer, that's, the way that I'm doing one-on-one coaching now. It's really about challenging what feels comfortable, because that's what the brain struggles with the most. As soon as something's uncomfortable, the brain wants to freak out. And what we want instead is just you pushing against what feels like a limitation and learning your power on the other side of breaking through that limitation. So here are some things to journal maybe, or to think on that, may help you with this topic. What parts of my life feel like I chose them? Really celebrate that. All the pieces of your life that you chose, especially if they're feeling a little mundane or you're feeling resentful in any way, just remember that you chose it. Why did you choose it? And really find the gratitude for the parts that you have chosen and that you love. And then look at the parts that maybe you're like, ugh, I wish maybe I hadn't chosen this. And look at what parts of it are changeable. Not every aspect, you can't take anything back, but you can change the trajectory of how you move forward. So just be mindful of that. Where have I been on autopilot or just following the path of least resistance? That's huge. What do I keep saying I want but never prioritize? Okay. These are the people that, have wants and desires, and then it's one day, someday, which ends up being never. So what do I keep saying I want, but never prioritize? And, if you're serious about what you want, one, you will prioritize it, but sometimes even having, again, that coach, that mentor, even a therapist that, helps you move forward and gives, maybe strategies and tools that way, help you get to a place where you're prioritizing the things that you want, getting out of your own way. And then last but not least, if fear wasn't a factor, what decision would I make this month, right now, this week? If fear wasn't a factor, what decision would I make right now? You have no idea, but just making that one decision can literally change the trajectory of your life. You could literally get on a consult call tomorrow, okay, and sign up for coaching, for instance. That's just one way, right? And literally have a completely different perspective and outlook on life 10 weeks from now, right? Or 6 months from now, or a year from now. It can literally be that simple. And people make it overcomplicated all the time because of fear. They let fear lead their decisions. So if fear wasn't a factor, what decision would you make right now? No matter what that is, like maybe it could be anything, right? It could be like, you know what? I normally never, ever take care of myself. I haven't gotten a haircut in a year. I'm going to go do that. Or I haven't, asked for help for someone to babysit the kids in 3 years. And I really want to date with my partner. I'm going to do that right now. Like if you just weren't worried about it, okay, what decision would you make that can literally change how you're feeling, change the way you treat yourself, change the way you prioritize and get yourself out of the default, okay? So I just want you to think about that, really asking yourself, is this what I really want, looking around at your life, or what I have settled for? There's a lot of reasons why people settle. And if you're settling and it doesn't feel good, you have to know you can change it. And how you change it is by making different decisions than you're used to making. It's often going to feel scary and uncomfortable because it's going to require you to do something you're not used to doing, which brings up fear and uncomfortable emotions. And part of emotional intelligence is knowing you will be okay even through feeling those uncomfortable emotions. Okay, and the more serious you are about the changes you want to make, the easier it is to get through those uncomfortable emotions. And if you need help with that, that is what I help my clients with. How to get really good in every aspect of their emotional intelligence skills and feeling all the feelings so they can go create lives they really love in every single part. Okay, every single category: family life, children, motherhood, parenting, all the things, career, money, entrepreneurship, everything. We look at everything. Okay, so if you need help with that, you can always reach out for a consult. And if you ever have any questions, that is the place to ask. You can also send an email if you'd like, but I do prefer a consult so we can talk and see where you're at and then determine what I have that may be the best fit for you. And just because you sign up for a consult doesn't mean you have to say yes or you have to be ready right then, but it will help you get that much closer to figuring out what you want the trajectory of your decisions to be. And maybe it's not me, maybe it's somebody else. Maybe there's even someone I can refer you to if I'm not your person. But even making the decision to schedule a consult can be life altering based on just what you do with that hour that we talk and everything that can come after it, whether we coach together or not. Sometimes people have breakthroughs just through the consult, okay? All right, I hope this episode was helpful, and I will see you all next week. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.